Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of JISC Beyond the Technology. We are recording live from DigiFest 2025 at the ICC in Birmingham. Very glad you can join us. My name is Ewan Leonard. This episode is going to be all about how digital leaders meet tomorrow. Very glad to be joined by our panel today. First up, we've got Siobhan Holton, who is lead digital content design developer from Coleg Gwent. Tamsin Smith, senior learning designer team lead from the University of Southampton. And Martin Wheatley, who is Deputy Head of Digital Innovation and iLearn at Leeds City College. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
No problem, very glad. Martin, starting with you, can you give us a little bit of information about you and your role, please?
So my title is Deputy Head of Digital Innovation and iLearn. iLearn stands for Independent Learning, so it's the kind of morphed out of the library team that we used to have, and now we kind of focus mainly on the skills across digital and employability and academic, and then we've got a team that delivers all of that, and then I'm responsible for digital innovation, or at least trying to introduce digital innovation within Leeds City College and Luminate Education Group. It's quite a challenge. There's a lot of sites, there's a lot of students, and there's just one of me, but I can still just have a good time trying to get people to innovate in a digital way. That's kind of me.
Brilliant. Tamsin?
Yeah, I'm a senior learning designer team lead at the University of Southampton, and I'm in a digital learning team, which is quite large. There's 22 of us. So we've got media producers within that and learning designers. And we sit alongside another team who deal with all the technical support for our VLE and so on. So it's quite a broad ranging role.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Siobhan?
I'm the digital content design developer for Coleg Gwent, responsible for upskilling teaching staff in the use of digital technologies and tools. I also lead the Digital 2030 government initiative at the college, and I also lead and manage our 10 digital future and wellbeing ambassadors, which are learner roles.
Fantastic, thanks very much. So the three of you were involved in a panel session earlier on today. How did you find it? What are you hoping as well that people take out of it? Siobhan, I'll start with you.
So how I found it, it was a big stage, but no, it was lovely to obviously share the stage with Tamsin and Martin as well. Really took some sort of key themes from there. I was talking to Tamsin about like the India trip that her college is doing, and how advanced sort of that is and the different sort of collaboration there. And then with Martin, obviously that collaborative approach as well with everything he's doing in his university. So yeah.
Brilliant. Tamsin, over to you.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. We had a panel, obviously, with two colleagues from FE. I'm working in HE, and it's interesting to see the differences and the similarities, that some of the things that we find challenges are the same. But also, I think it can be frustrating in HE that progress and change can be very slow. And it's always interesting to learn from FE colleges where they're able to move things much more quickly at times. And they often have to work with less budget and do things much more quickly. So I think, there's a lot of lessons we can learn from our colleagues in FE.
Brilliant. And Martin?
The panel was really interesting. It was nice to kind of connect with people that had been on the digital leaders course that JISC provide. So that was really nice to kind of connect and talk about things. I think it was interesting just now to hear you say about how FE can be quite agile. It can, and it's a bit of an A-team experience where you have to make do and mend a lot of the time. But then there are still some bits that marry up, and sometimes we move just as slow, if not slower, than HE as well, because, not to kind of simplify it too much, but we have to get things right with what we have. There's not that wiggle room, perhaps, as there is in HE, where you can fail, as Paul Isker said this morning. You've got to kind of get it right, otherwise your failure could slow you right down again.
Fantastic. Tamsin, I'll start with you. Bit of a big question. We'll go through all three of you to get your answers, but I'll start with yourself. AI, as you'd expect, has been a very big topic across DigiFest this year and across EduTech as well. How do you see it could potentially help to future-proof learning?
That is a tricky question to start with. I think AI is the topic that everyone's discussing, but I know that some of the research we've done internally as an institution is that students are willing to embrace AI themselves. They want to explore Gen AI, but they are absolutely resistant to staff making use of Gen AI. They don't like it if they think that something has been drafted using Gen AI, but they're particularly resistant to course materials being made using it or anything like that. So students really are pushing back against staff using it. So that's kind of what we're trying to work with at the moment is learning about students' attitudes towards it.
Yeah, one of the other podcasts on that topic we were discussing earlier on today was on generative AI and finding different groups of students, some of whom are very happy to use it, some of whom are very resistant, and some of whom completely unaware. I'm presuming the three of you have all sort of experienced something on those lines in your work.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a broad spectrum of student usage at the moment. And I think we found when we've used the discovery tool question set about AI and Gen AI, we're seeing that some of our students, some disciplines, we expect our students in computer science to have thought about Gen AI a lot and AI, and they're very experienced. But actually, we've got some areas like humanities where you wouldn't assume the students would be as digitally literate, but they're very much career oriented and know that their degree in history or English isn't naturally going to lead them into a specific career. So they're looking at the breadth of their skills. So our students don't necessarily fit into the pigeonholes we expect.
Martin, what about yourself?
So we're seeing from staff and from students that everybody's starting points are so vastly different, and their opinions and their kind of perspectives and their views on it are vastly different. You could go into a class or you could go into a training session with staff and just find that the starting points are so broad that you go in with a plan and you think, this is what I want to teach people, this is what I want to tell them, and then that goes out the window and you spend an hour just answering questions to kind of assuage fears and concerns from staff and from students. We're not seeing students too worried about staff having used it, as long as they're aware that the staff have used it and that the staff have done the thinking on either end. If you use it and just use that output and copy paste, if you're a staff member or if you're a student, I think you'll come a cropper, and it doesn't matter whether it's Gen AI or whether it's just Googling it and cutting and pasting. If you're putting the work in at either end to say, I want this, seeing what it's given you, and then take that and kind of work with it to craft something that your students can work with, I think they're quite accepting of that. But it's that broad starting point that I'm less surprised now, but I'm very surprised by that complete gap between one person and the next in terms of where they're starting.
Yeah. Siobhan, is that tallying with your work down in South Wales?
Yeah, definitely. I think what's important in all of this as well is the learner voice with it all. So we don't make assumptions, I suppose. Recently in Coleg Gwent, we did an AI temperature check for a week where we went around learners, staff members, teaching and business support staff. It wasn't a formal form or a survey, it was just a chat. So let's get a real feel for what's going on with AI in our institution, because it is so big. And there were some telling signs from that. One is the consistency in messaging from teaching staff to teaching staff. So, from that, we've created clear guidance. Another thing is what learners can and cannot use it for. They want suggested tools that they should be able to use. So in Coleg Gwent, we have Canva for Education. So introducing AI to learners, we tend to go down that route. For staff, we use Copilot. But then, it's just getting sort of a feel for what they want and then how we sort of implement it. So even things like AI detection tools, some learners were saying my teacher is getting it up and putting it through an AI detection tool and is coming up as plagiarized when actually is my own work. And the research out there says that you shouldn't really be using AI detection tools at all to clarify if it is a learner's work or not. So again, there's been work around sort of consistent messaging for that, and we've recently put out a SharePoint article. We use newsletters that have said our stance is that we do not encourage AI detection tools. And if you are encouraging the use or using AI detection tools to show that a learner has committed plagiarism, then the quality process won't support you in that sense. You need to make sure that you're following the correct procedures, which is the malpractice policy. I think that AI temperature check for us was really important. And I like the way that we did that. And that's probably something that we're going to continue doing probably every sort of couple of months, because AI is constantly evolving and we want to make sure that what we are implementing is actually being seen on the ground, I suppose.
And it's great that you're taking that temperature check every couple of months, obviously, with it evolving so much, to make sure that you're staying on top of all the appropriate work you need to with the students. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Martin, going to you. So one of the bigger themes of DigiFest in general and the wider EduTech is data-informed education. So with your work, how do you feel data-driven education is actually improving outcomes and actually improving student outcomes in general and the quality of education?
I'm not a data-driven person in my role. Our colleges, we've got APs and we've got our quality of education team, and they're not very much. They use a lot of data to inform their kind of decisions and their approaches in terms of supporting teachers so that they can develop them. I'm not massively data driven from my bit. I much rather have one staff member come out of a session and tell a story of how it's impacted on them, whether it's moved them from 0 to 2 to 3 on a confidence scale. That for me is more impactful than I've done 200, 300 staff members have been trained, and they're now 200, 300 more are using Gemini, for example. Are they using it in a way that really kind of saves them time, gives them confidence that they know what they're doing and they can explain AI to their students? And so, yeah, I'm not heavy on data. I'm not process driven. I'm not one step, next step. I'm just kind of like, let's break stuff and see what happens. So I'll get that out of the way and let other people who maybe do rely on data and make use of it to have a bash at answering that.
Yeah, I think carrying on from that, I think data is important, but the impact is far more important. So I talked earlier about we use Anthology Ally at Southampton. We're able to assess the accessibility of our courses, and we can build on that. But if I had a choice with 2 projects where I could improve the accessibility score of a course from 60% to 70%, or I could work with staff to improve all aspects of their course because I know they have a visually impaired learner on that course, I'd rather work with the course that's going to make a real impact for one learner who will then progress through than look at just changing a metric. So I think, yes, data is important and lots of people build their work around it, but it's not the only important thing. And sometimes impact is far more important.
Yeah. Is that what you're finding as well, Siobhan?
Yeah, I completely get where obviously Martin and Tamsin are coming from. For us, I think the learner voice is imperative to have that holistic sort of view on education. Hasn't necessarily got to be a form or a survey. It can just be that chat with them or the member of staff. But one thing that I sort of learned from the Digital Leaders course, we had a whole session on data, didn't we? And it was the stories behind what that data gives you. And sort of making sure that if you are going to be asking for data, thinking about what do you actually want that data to show you, and then what's the next step. So not just collecting data for the sake of collecting it. And that sort of was a light bulb moment for me when I was on the Leaders course. I thought, yeah, that's so spot on. So when we do, for example, we do virtual reality workshops with our learners, we want to gather feedback because we want to say, has your skills and knowledge improved by using virtual reality? Luckily it has, but if it hadn't, then we need to go back to the drawing board and think, right, okay, if that's not working, then what else should we use? I sit in Coleg Gwent in the quality team, which is quite heavily data driven in aspects. So we have our mid-course questionnaire I mentioned earlier, early course questionnaire, mid-course questionnaires. And then from that, then we have detailed analysis, and then we have action points from that. But then that translates then into the learner experience in the hope that obviously it improves it going forward. But yeah, always central to that is the learner voice and making sure we have that holistic approach to what they're saying and then actioning what they're saying as well.
Sure. Sticking with you, another complex question. The concept of technology for good has definitely been gaining momentum over the last several years, but there's also a balance to be struck in making sure that we stay on the right side of ethical considerations and social responsibility. So we'll come to all 3 of you because I think this is a fascinating topic to cover. But starting with yourself, how are you approaching that?
I think is making sure that there's no digital divide when it comes to learners. So making sure that they all have the same opportunities. Something that was launched in Coleg Gwent was the digital lending library. So all learners, regardless of course level, can go and loan equipment from vlogging kits, podcasting kits, high-spec cameras, high-spec laptops. And that sort of came about because we had funding from Welsh Government, but also because we realised that with the AI world, we wanted to have more authentic assessments. And then, so we wanted to go away from, the traditional written assessments and allow them to have that creativity. So having that centralised resource has been really important. And the learning resource officers and the libraries have been really sort of central to that as well.
Tamsin, over to you.
Yeah, so at the University of Southampton, we're a civic university and we try to work with our whole community. And we've got a campus in Delhi and we try and have a lot of collaborative links with India. And so we'll work with local business people there and our students will work with them to help formulate business plans. So they're people who wouldn't be able to access that kind of support. They don't have the funding to pay for it, but it means that our students can directly impact other people's lives. They can share what they have learned at university with people. So I think that's a nice example of using technology for good, that those students are doing, participating in something that's authentic. They're being assessed on that, but they're also making a difference to somebody else's life. So, yeah.
Over to you, Martin.
Yeah, so as I said in the talk earlier on, we've kind of looked at that digital equity piece, and we've kind of given everybody, students and staff, all access to the same kind of generative AI platform in an effort to level the playing field. So some students will come in and they won't have a phone. Some will come in and they'll have a beat up old laptop that barely works. If they can log into their college account, whether it's at home or in school or in college, they've got access to the same platform with the same safeguards and the same monitoring in the background, that we can kind of keep an eye on that they're using it responsibly and safely. So that was a big kind of aspect to our work around that AI piece, when you turn it on, how you turn it on, who you turn it on for, because we did want to make sure that they all had access to something, because we've seen students who will have the latest kit, have the latest AI, will pay for these platforms, and they're at an advantage to someone who maybe wants to use it or wants to learn how to use it and just cannot access it. We've got a kind of corporate social responsibility team within the change and transformation department. And we've given away old Jamboards to local schools and local charities, because we're trying to kind of give back to the community as well. So we no longer use these bits of kit. Can we give them to someone who will find a use for it and won't have to invest what little money they have in additional tech? It's a massive challenge. It's a massive issue. I mean, we're not exactly well funded in FE, but we try and make what we do have go as far as possible, even when it's end of life, rather than sending it out to a skip or a landfill or recycling. It's like, who can make use of this for the next couple of years? So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that listening to your answers, I'm sure the concepts of accessibility and inclusivity, that they seem very prevalent in your work. I'm assuming that's something that's front and center of the actual approach for technology for good.
Yeah, and I think coming into that as well, I was in a webinar the other day, but the thing I took from it was learn fast and act slow, because I think it's very easy to get wrapped up in this world with digital technologies and tools, and we want the new shiny toy and the new shiny tool. But really, I think it's important to learn it. Yeah, what does it do? How can it change teaching and learning? How can it improve it? How can it enhance it? But then actually think, how does this align in my context, and are we actually using it to make meaningful, impactful change, or are we just using it because it's the new shiny tool? What problem do we want it to overcome? And I think if we go back to that in the first instance, rather than just always chasing the new thing, I think that's probably more of an effective way when it comes to technology and tools as well.
Yeah. Very grateful for the three of you being here in general, because obviously we've got the spread between HE and FE. So concentrating on HE with you, Tamsin, for this one. Looking at organizations, outside of your own, what advice would you give to them when it comes to helping to design really useful and impactful digital learning for the future?
I'd say consider things like universal design for learning. If they're making resources, think about the broad spread of learners. Don't just think about one small aspect. Don't just think about the digital accessibility. Think about all the aspects of the learners that you might have and what they might need. How inclusive is it? Have you decolonized your curriculum? There's so many facets that you need to think about. And then what Siobhan was saying earlier, the digital divide, what devices can you access that learning on? So try and make sure that everything is platform agnostic so that you can reach the broader spread of learners. But I think also for universities, the challenge is to ensure that all young people could see it as a place where they can thrive. So I mean, I know for the University of Southampton, we have something called the Life Lab, where we have a programme at Southampton General Hospital that is aimed at primary and secondary school students. So they come to the hospital, they learn a few things that are relevant for their age, but they're learning from university staff, and they're told, no, this is some of the things that you can do at university. So trying to get students at that very young age to see that university is an option for them. It's not just for the person who seems to be the very brightest person in their class. It's any of them could go on and achieve something at university. And I think that's a really important message for young people, that they don't see it as a career path that's closed off at a young age.
Sure. Martin, so concentrating more on FE.
Yeah. So the way I see it is we've got to give staff within curriculum the skills and the confidence to use the tools to effectively design kind of digital learning, because if they're coming from industry and they've maybe not used some of these bits of kit, and we're suddenly saying to them kind of out of the blue a little bit, hey, you're now going to use Google Classroom and slides and stuff, and previously in industry you were just looking at emails once a week, they'll suddenly have this massive panic and fear about how they do it, and they'll just end up like, you'll have a PDF posted into the classroom and that'll be it, and it'll be like tumbleweed. I remember during COVID I wanted access to all of these Google Classrooms because I want to reach the students, because we're all remote. I want to give them some tools and some skills they can take away and use to study independently. And you go into this classroom and they've put like 3 things in there at the start of the year, and then lockdown happens and there's literally nothing else in that classroom. You're like, what's the point? What is the point of me putting something in there that the students probably don't even know exists? So we need to do that first to lay the groundwork so that the staff feel empowered to look and go, I know my students, I know my course, I know my industry. What do I design for them digitally that they can use to learn? That's our starting point for it, with that sort of level.
Yeah, and I guess that sort of circles back a little bit to what we were talking about with AI, of making sure that your staff are very well prepared to deliver that learning to students, so they know then how to use it effectively.
Yeah, I sometimes feel like a bit of a broken record in college, because I've been working there for 20 years and I talk about this stuff a lot. So being able to take me out of that equation and give the staff member or the department the skills to talk about it with their students and with each other is much more impactful than, it's Martin again. I know the 3 things he's going to talk about. It's actually, well, I've spoken to Martin and I've done this and now we're going to try this. And they support each other to do that development. And it's not just me trying to tell them how to do it or show them. It's them taking it on and owning it for the betterment of their students' experience.
Sure. Well, just speaking personally, you have not been a broken record at any time. Siobhan, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think echoing what Martin and Tamsin said as well, but also bringing others on the journey with you. If you're a digital leader, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're the expert in the field. You really need to sort of lean on the expertise of others and bring them on the journey with you. There's no way that digital should just be a sort of silo. It needs to be infused in various departments in order to really make that digital transformation. I think that's what's really key. Also to consider is the sustainability of things. So making sure, whether that be tools or technologies, making sure that they're sustainable and you're making the most effective use out of them. Things that we learned from the JISC Digital Leaders course was like the co-design playbook, which just helps bring others on the journey with you. So how are you getting all important thing, that learner voice? And that, I think that's really key, really. And then something else that we spoke about was the innovation pipeline. And I love that, where, where are you starting? Where do you want to go? And then also considering when that innovation pipeline ends, what are you going to do? And then it's having that, I know it sort of goes against the keynote this morning as well, but having some sort of plan in place, I think it is quite important.
Yeah, fantastic. Just to start wrapping up, other than appearing on Beyond the Technology, what's been the real highlight of DigiFest for you so far? Starting with you.
I really loved the keynote this morning. I love what he said about a old organisation and new technologies. It's just an old, expensive organisation. So making sure you've got the infrastructure in regards to support and the staff there is really key. And just being comfortable with failing, I think that comes with innovation, is something new, is something exciting, is not, you haven't got a book that tells you how to do it, but being comfortable then with actually failing with it, I think that's really key, yeah.
Sandra?
Yeah, I think for me as well, it was the keynote. I think I can think of a number of examples where senior leadership have requested a course and they've said the course is going to solve everything. And I think there are squirrel bridges. They're these things that we've been told people need, and perhaps in my team we've questioned that, but we've done it because somebody senior has said make this, but it's not always the answer, and we've suggested other ways. And I think now being able to go back and talk about that will be quite interesting with those people.
And Martin?
I was going to say the keynote, but it's going to have to be a bit different now.
Which was pretty good.
Lunch was,
wasn't it?
Lunch was good. I didn't get the cheesecake.
I like the lasagna, personally. That was very tasty. But no, I think it's the chance to connect and to learn off colleagues and peers in an environment like this. Like, we see each other online in some of the kind of JISC forums and things like that, but then being able to actually come together and share experiences and have people actually want to hear them is really good. It's really nice. It's a good way to spend a couple of days. Beats working.
But that's exactly what we were kind of hoping from DigiFest, with that community feel, making sure that everyone's learning, everyone's enjoying themselves and getting something positive out of it, which it sounds like you are, which is wonderful to hear.
Definitely.
So just to finish up, where can people get hold of you if they want to carry on these conversations and maybe engage with you a little bit about your work?
I mean, I'll be here for today and tomorrow. If you see me knocking around, ginger hair, glasses, beard, please feel free to stop me.
On LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm under my name, Martin Wheatley. I would say that they're the best two places to start. Find me here, give me a swift elbow, or find me on LinkedIn. It's all good.
Tamsin?
Yeah, for me, I'd say look for me on LinkedIn, Tamsin M. Smith, or if you look on the University of Southampton web pages, you'll be able to find me, get my email address. I'm happy to reply to any emails from anybody as well.
Thanks. And Siobhan?
Yeah, just echoing what Martin and Tamsin said. If you see me around, come by, have a chat. Also on LinkedIn, Siobhan Poulton, and then connect to me. Yeah, happy to have the conversation further then and arrange meetings, teams and whatnot.
Thank you kindly. Well, Siobhan, Tamsin, Martin, it's been great to chat to you. Thank you very much for joining us today and for your efforts throughout the day. It's been very well appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, a quick note about our upcoming event, Connect More 2025. That's our free online event from the 14th to the 16th of May. Education Enhanced, navigating today's challenges with practical solutions. Find out more at jisc.ac.uk/connect-more. See you there.